Hi there, and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, a podcast for people who are thirsty for interesting stories about wine and the people who make it. We give you a peek behind the label of some of your favorite bottles and also help you discover some new favorites too. On today's show, how a chemistry professor turned an abundance of cranberries into a career in wine. Lanny is one of the best-known and most respected vintners in California's Livermore Valley. His Fenestra Winery is known for crafting everything from Albarino to port and also sharing their wines in a historic, rustic property at affordable price points. Fenestra is Latin for window, and we're excited that Lanny is joining us today to give us a window into his world. We are the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm Mary Babbitt.
I'm Mary Orlin. From homemade cranberry wine to a dizzying array of more than 20 award-winning wines, Lanny Replogal's wine journey launched in Washington State, then landed in historic Livermore Valley, east of San Francisco and San Jose. Lanny spent more than 45 years in wine, and according to one local winemaker here in Livermore, Lanny is a historian of Livermore Valley Wine. This former chemistry teacher connects the technical to the artistic when it comes to winemaking and calls upon chemistry to name his art in a bottle. Though Lanny is retired back in 2018, that never really fully took. And Mary Babbitt and I are so happy that we could coax Lanny out of retirement to join us on the pod. Lanny, welcome to Sip Sip Hooray.
Thank you.
You better set the record straight on how to say your name.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Lanny Replogal.
Lanny Replogal. I didn't get it.
You're not alone.
I can do Lanny. I got Lanny down. I bet you get this a lot, though. People probably trip on your last name a lot.
They do. People can't spell it or pronounce it. And so, yeah, I'm kind of used to it. But that is, of course, my name. And as you mentioned, I was a professor of chemistry at San Jose State University. And I and a couple of friends started making wine at home. And the first efforts were really not very good. But making wine was still a lot of fun. And so we continued making wine, homemade wine. And after a while, I got to the point where I enjoyed making wine more than teaching.
Is that right? Well, wait, was the first batch really cranberries? And how did that come about?
Okay, well, that was back in, I think it was 1958 or maybe 59. There was a cranberry taint situation. There'd been, I think it was an herbicide that had been sprayed on cranberries, and people got very concerned that that could be a health hazard. And so I was in graduate school at the University of Washington at that time, and that building also housed the state chemist. And so there were all these shipments of cranberries from cranberry farms across the state and also, I think, from Oregon. And they were just piling up in the state chemist's office, and so let's make cranberry wine.
When life gives you cranberries.
Make cranberry wine.
So we borrowed a press from the pharmacy department, which was also in the chemistry building, and we made cranberry wine. And it actually turned out fairly well, drinkable. Some of it, the fermentation did not go to completion, and so there was a little bit of sugar left when we bottled it, like a home brew, in champagne bottles with a crown cap, and it re-fermented, so we had sparkling cranberry wine.
Oh, even better.
And so that was the initial effort. Our home winemaking effort started in 1961, and as I said, I enjoyed making wine more than teaching, and so we began looking around for another place, another winery that had the facilities and permits so we could make our wine there. And by a series of coincidences, we got connected with Stony Ridge Winery. If any of you, remember, the original Stony Ridge Winery, which has undergone several changes of ownership, was located in Pleasanton off of Vineyard Avenue, close to where Rubino Winery is now. That was another old, historic, large winery, 2.5, 3 stories. So we made an agreement with the people at Stony Ridge, and I was their consulting winemaker, and then I had a corner to make my own wine. And that was in 1976. And there were only 5 wineries in Livermore Valley at that time.
Only 5, wow.
And probably some of those who live around here would know some of them. Wente and Kincannon, of course, have been around the longest. Both of them started in 1883. And then there was Stony Ridge, Fenestra, and then another winery that very few people know about, Villa Armando Winery.
I have not heard of that. Nope.
So some deep roots here in the Livermore Valley, which we should say, we're actually sitting in the tasting room today. And this is a beautiful property here. And this building is historic as well, right?
Yes. Tell us about this.
This building that we are occupying now, we moved here in 1980, was originally built in 1889 by George True. And that is the basis for our most popular wine, True Red.
Which we just happen to have in our glass right now.
Yeah.
Yes, and so we honor George with the name, and the label is a combination then of his name and my technical training in chemistry. It looks like the symbol for an element in the periodic table with the symbol TR, which of course stands for true rhodium.
And I see that the atomic weight is 76.
Yes.
I remember that from my chemistry studies.
And there's also 18.89, which of course is to invoke the year that George built this winery.
I love that. Those nods to your history and George's as well. That's really cool.
Exactly. And we have a photograph of George over on that wall. And there's also a photo gallery which covers and captures some of the history of the property.
Fantastic. So how did you come upon being the owner of George's barn?
Well, the property at the time was actually owned by the Catholic Church. And so we were leasing from the Catholic Church, although initially they were leasing to a farmer, and then we subleased from the farmer. But after a couple of years, we were dealing directly with the Catholic Church. It was a large parcel, over 700 acres.
Were they interested in any of the wine?
No.
No sacramental wine here?
No. Anyway, in around 1995, the church, and by the way, they bought this property with the intention of establishing a cemetery here.
Oh, really?
So they actually have 4 bodies that were buried in the hills to the west of us.
Oh, and you know where the bodies are buried then.
Very good. But they changed their mind about the property, what was going to happen to it, and they sold the property to Ruby Hill Development. And then we were inherited by Ruby Hill as leasing the property. And so then we were leasing from Ruby Hill Development, and they were required as part of the mitigation process to help support the Livermore Valley wine country. So they planted a lot of vineyards, including around our winery, and a lot of other acreage as well. They asked me what I would like planted on the property, and I knew that Cabernet, Chardonnay, Merlot, Zinfandel were readily available at other vineyards, and I was interested in making Rhone varieties, and so I specified Syrah and Mourvèdre. Somewhat later, about 10 years later, we grafted a little over an acre to Grenache so that we would have the three major Rhone-type varieties.
So you went against the grain here.
Yes, and those three, the Rhone types, are the basis of our so-called GSM, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre blend, which we call infrared.
Oh, I like that.
I like that. Well, we will be tasting that next.
So we've had to do extensive strengthening and cleanup of the winery. When we first moved here in 1980, the place really was falling down. There were no doors, hadn't been used as a winery, we believe, since about 1960. To give you an idea of how much trash and dirt, cow manure, cattle had been wandering through. Again, there were no doors.
Yeah.
And we filled 7 20 cubic yard dumpsters.
Oh my gosh.
Within a couple of weeks.
Oh. Yikes. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And the winery, like most old wineries, is built into the hillside. And so the back wall, of course, people can't see it, but over that way is below ground. And over the years, the pressure of the earth had caused the building to lean. And so we had these posts in particular replumbed, and there you could see, if you could see the base, you'd see that there'd been a movement about 4 or 5 inches.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
I see that.
Wow.
So you took a look at this dilapidated winery falling apart, and you said, okay, I can take this challenge on.
I got to have it. What did
your
your wife think? Did she think you were crazy? Or was she on board?
She was on board. It had been built as a winery, and there were drain channels, cement floor, and it was intended to be a winery. There was hardly any winemaking equipment left. It was just shambles.
Okay.
But anyway, then in 1997, well, first of all, Ruby Hill Development offered to build, they took a look at
What they were leaving you?
what there was, what was here, and offered to build us a new winery building, and we said, why? This place has a lot of history and character.
It sure does. And you can't get that back at a new building. It's just not there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
If these walls could talk.
So
Imagine.
they agreed to renovate the building for us.
Nice.
And so that was done in 1997. And then 10 years later, 2007, of course, we purchased the property, including the building and the vineyards, from Ruby Hill. And I didn't mention the acreage. We have about 6 acres in vineyards, and we hope to do more plantings, but that's for the future.
Well, and if our listeners could see outside these barn doors here, it's just spectacular. There's no leaves on the vines yet, but the rains we've had this winter have just rendered this the greenest space you've ever seen. It is just eye-poppingly beautiful outside, and this is really just a slice of heaven. The property alone, I know the building is full of interesting history and great character and all of that, but the property is just stunning.
Well, it's nice that you have this history and character here because so many regions have these super modern wineries that have kind of no soul in a way. There's a soul here.
Yes, very much so. And speaking then, Aaron Luna, who's our winemaker, told me just the other day that the buds in the Grenache section are beginning to push.
Oh, it's happening.
Yeah,
Right.
so we have bud break.
Great.
This has been a late, everyone's been talking about a late bud break this year because of all the cold we've had and the wet winter this has been. Well, so why don't we talk about, while we've got it in our glass, before we drink it all up, why don't you tell us about the wine and what you like about it and what the flavors we're tasting?
So this is True Red, Lot 33, so you have to explain that.
Okay. Yeah, actually, True Red was a way to use up wine that was not a good candidate to be bottled.
Really?
Back in the beginning of True Red, we did not call it Lot 1 because we didn't expect it to be a continuous production. But back again in 1986, I think, we were making white Zinfandel because that was very popular back then.
It sure was, yeah.
And when one makes white Zinfandel, you pick Zinfandel when it's not quite ripe at a relatively low sugar, and then you crush and press, kind of like making a rosé, and so you get just a very light color. But as you begin the pressing, and the press goes through increasing pressure, after you get a lot of free run juice, as it's called, then you begin to get more and more color because you're pressing harder. And then also you begin to get more tannin coming out from the skins. Mm-hmm. So we had a fair amount of this rather thin red wine that was a byproduct of making white Zinfandel. And, well, what are we going to do with this? So I got together other more ripe grapes, in particular a Petite Syrah from a vineyard that was in Livermore Valley, and that was quite ripe, and put in some other red wines, Cabernet and so on, to make a decent blend. And that was the genesis of True Red.
Well, it's delicious.
It's delicious.
Really nice.
I would say it's more than decent, but it's been through some evolution. So what type of blend are we tasting today?
I don't know, to tell you the truth, because I'm no longer the winemaker, but typically there are over 30 different batches of wine that go in there.
Whoa.
And it is usually then a blend of Bordeaux type, some Iberian varieties, and let's see, this is 33. Yeah, Aaron Luna again would have put the blend together, and the sheet is really about
that's really
half
something.
A page or so.
I have not had. I don't know that I've had a wine with that many different grapes in it, and it's really spectacular. It's a really great red wine.
Easy drinking, and just darn right delicious.
Yeah, and it's really very well balanced. Very nice.
Thank you.
How is it being retired or semi-retired? Have you come to it easily, or do you find yourself wanting to be back in the cellar and making wine or whatever, or in the lab?
I've accepted it, and of course, I'm just not as young as I used to be, and that's the way life goes.
So what are you doing with your days now? What are your activities now that you're retired?
Well, I still come in 3 days a week and take care of business affairs.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And work in the office, but I don't get much involved in the winemaking process anymore.
Did you find with winemaking that your chemistry background, was it a natural fit? And was that the piece of it that you enjoyed, the chemistry part of making wine?
Well, it certainly helps to be a chemist. And what I usually say is a winemaker needs to appreciate and understand what I would call the basics of chemistry to help them in the winemaking. But you don't have to be a trained chemist to be a winemaker. And actually, it isn't the chemistry or scientific part that I enjoy, but rather it's the creative part. And of course, it's a definite contrast between wine and the compounds one would make in research. Mm-hmm. You can drink the wine.
That's true. I spent a whole summer between my junior and senior years in a chem lab doing research, and by the end of the 3 months, we had isolated this compound, and this, and it's like, well, now what?
Yeah. And since we got into that, the compound that I worked on for my doctoral thesis, and then I also continued at San Jose State, that compound was azulene. And I won't try to bore people about it, but it is an interesting compound, just for the people who...
Yeah, for the chemists out there or the science geeks. I want to know about azulene. Give us the Cliff Notes.
Okay. Yeah, azulene is an isomer of naphthalene. If people remember, naphthalene is an aromatic benzenoid compound that has two benzene rings fused together, sharing a common edge, so you have two six-membered rings. Azulene is an isomer of that, where there's a seven-membered ring fused to a five-membered ring, and it's fully conjugated. That is, so it's a non-benzenoid aromatic compound, and it's colored. Azulene itself is blue.
Okay.
And by the way, we are planning to come out with another blend that we are going to call azulene.
It's a great name. I love it. Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, you use that conjugated. One of your wines isn't that the name of one of your wines?
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to that.
Oh, we're not there yet? Okay, that's coming up.
Actually, let's go back and talk about infrared, since that's what we have in our glass now. Is that's, again, something else scientific. And what I'm really enjoying, coming from a science background and as a creative person myself, the yin and yang of your approach to winemaking, you know, technical, scientific, chemistry side, but then the artistry of what you put in the bottle and how you think about the creative process.
Okay, yes. Infrared, again, is a GSM, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre blend. And I chose a name, infrared, and you could interpret that in a couple of different ways. First of all, infrared means beyond red. That is, it's beyond red in the spectrum. And in chemistry, as well as other scientific disciplines, we use infrared spectroscopy as a routine analytical tool. And the image on the label for infrared is that of a red-hot filament that is giving off infrared radiation, heat.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, this wine doesn't give off heat in the mouth. It's just, really a beautiful, luscious wine.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this glass. I like it.
Good.
Yeah. It's really delicious.
I think I'm going to add to my tasting notes that this wine is infrared, beyond red.
Beyond red,
When
yeah.
you're trying to describe the
Yeah,
color
it's
to
just not
somebody.
a simple
Yeah.
red wine.
Right.
It's beyond that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the color is a nice, deep, ruby, really, really nice.
Beyond red.
Beyond red, yeah. It's on the scale of 1 to 10, it's an 11. So, not to bore you with going backwards, but I'm curious what kind of teacher you were. Were you a tough professor? Were you an easy professor? Were you an easy A, or were you tough?
I would say that I was probably tough professor.
Yeah.
I did not grade on a curve.
Okay.
I graded on absolute scale.
Uh-huh.
To get an A, had to get 80% or better. B was, I don't remember exactly, but around 70.
So have any of your former students come in and said, "Hey, you were my prof at San Jose State"? Well, we told you about Dane Stark, who's a winemaker here at Page Mill Winery. His dad took classes from you at San Jose State in chemistry.
I get occasional, but not too many anymore. But the class, yes, that Dane Stark father took, I started a class in the chemistry of wine, just a 1-unit class at San Jose State. And I think it is no longer being taught, but I'm not sure.
That was nice. It'd be, kind of marrying your two interests there, the chemistry of wine. Love it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I asked you this earlier about the property here and purchasing it. And I asked if your wife was on board with the notion of taking over the kind of the 7 dumpsters of all of it. But what was, going from a chemistry professor to a winemaker is a leap of faith because, saying, I love this so much, I want to do it full time. Was she ready for that? Or did she say, no, you better stick with your secure?
I didn't stop teaching.
Oh, you kept doing it in tandem.
Had to have an income to support
Well,
the
that's
family.
kind of where I was going with it. It's like...
So, yeah, I continued teaching at San Jose State and was full-time teaching, but after, maybe 10, 12 years, then I started taking reduced teaching loads. And then they had a program called FERP, Faculty Early Retirement Program. And as it turned out, when they had to cut back on staff, I found out that the people in the FERP program were the first to go. I could have stayed and just requested a leave without pay, but I said, yeah, I'm leaving.
You were ready.
So that was 1992. So I taught there for 31 years.
Okay. And I know that the switch to winemaking was the right move for you because you're really good at it. And has it been fun for you to watch the evolution of the Livermore Valley and the wine scene here? You said this was one of the first 5?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's certainly grown from there.
It certainly has. And now there are over 50 wineries in the area.
And this is a pretty special place, the Livermore Valley. It is, when people think about California wine, they often go straight to kind of the Napa-Sonoma scene. But this is a really vibrant wine community. And tell me what you enjoy about being part of the Livermore Valley wine scene.
The enthusiasm and friendliness of all the other wineries and the winery people. We are very welcoming to the people that come to visit, and we help and support each other. And it is a pretty tight-knit community. The older wineries, Wente and Kincannon, Wente in particular, have been very supportive of the other wineries. Most of the other wineries, besides those big 2, are small on, production on the order of thousands of cases. And again, we help and support each other. And we have a organization, the Livermore Valley Wine Country, which is helping to promote the area.
Which is fantastic, and it's an area people should really discover, especially for anybody who is not just living in the Bay Area, but visiting. It's a fairly easy drive from San Jose, from Oakland.
Even from San Francisco, you're not that far away.
Right, which is really incredible. One thing Mary B. mentioned in her intro is that you keep your wines affordable. And I wanted to ask, what's the philosophy behind that? Why do that?
Well, my wife, Fran, and I both agreed that wines should be affordable. And I must admit, I'm a little surprised that our wines have gone up, I would say, appreciably in price, but we have to do it. But I never thought that we would get wines above $20 in price, but of course we are forced by economics to do so.
I remember visiting years ago, and the wines were around $20 a bottle, and I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And they were good.
Really
good.
Yeah, I mean, the quality of the wine for the price point is just outstanding. And sure, they're a little more now, but I mean, you're going to spend $20 on a hamburger nowadays, so that's life. It happens, and so you got to, in order to pay for all the labor and all of that, the price has to reflect that. But you still keep it at prices like in the 30s. I think your top one on the website right now might be 45 or 48 that I saw, and for your top price, that's really outstanding.
Yes, and I should mention that True Red, which is our most popular wine, is very economically priced. We just released Lot 33 and increased the price to $18 a bottle.
18.
What? It's under 20.
15.
Oh my word! This is a deal. If you're listening, get out.
Get out here before it sells out. Before we take it all.
It's it's terrifically. They're beautifully expressed wines, and it's so refreshing that you're interested in the consumer's point of view and looking out for the person trying to enjoy a good glass of wine without breaking the bank. I appreciate that.
And we are now tasting a wine we mentioned earlier. This is your Conjugation.
Okay, when I think of the word, I go to conjugal, like the visits. Was that in your head at all with that name?
I think of Conjugation because I forgot it. I was a chemistry major. I'm a lapsed chemistry major, but Conjugation at first meant to me grammar and conjugating sentences.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I chose a name for Conjugation and Infrared, and with others, True Red. Conjugation has several meanings. In common or general usage, it means union or to bring together.
Like the visits.
Like a blend. And it is a blend of Bordeaux-type varietals. Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot. And all of those varieties we source from other vineyards here in Livermore Valley. But in chemistry, it has a specific meaning, and you can't, of course, see it, but on the label, we have a image there. We use lines to indicate bonds between carbon atoms. And so there are two parallel lines, and then at a jag, there's a single line, single bond, and then there's another pair of bonds, two lines. Whenever you have that arrangement, two double bonds separated by only one single bond, they are said to be in conjugation.
Okay.
So again, a specific meaning.
Could that also, especially for this wine, what it makes me think of, it's in harmony? Because this wine is so harmonic with all the different grape varieties in it. It's just, seamless.
Well, I love that you bring your chemistry background into this, and you have a little fun with it too. And then this is wine for the thinking person, your chemistry fans out there will get the get the double meanings and stuff. But also, it's just like we said, it's beautiful. It's for everybody, but there's a wink to chemistry in every bottle, and I like that.
There's another story about the name that I just remembered that might
tell
be
us.
of interest.
Yeah, of course it would be.
When we first started the winery, we were looking around for a name for our winery. And we looked at California map, and we were looking for a Spanish, nice-sounding name, and we saw Ventana, Big Sur, wilderness. So actually, we started out as Ventana Winery, and Ventana tied in with the image that we had at the time on our label, which was a view looking out from the old Ruby Hill Winery. And I always have to emphasize the old Ruby Hill because there's a new Ruby Hill, but
yes,
it's not that one.
Okay.
The old Ruby Hill Winery, again, was in Pleasanton off Vineyard Avenue. And it was a rather large, handsome, red brick building. It was built in 1887 by the Krellin family. And Stony Ridge occupied that building in 1975. And again, we joined Stony Ridge there in 1976. But anyway, we started out as Ventana. Ventana means window in Spanish. And then we found out there was a vineyard down in Monterey Valley, Greenfield area, called Ventana Vineyards.
Right, yes.
And we went down there and talked to the guy, and it seemed to be okay, no conflict, because we were making wine, and he was selling wine to wineries, and didn't seem to be a problem. But then he decided to start his own winery, and he wanted exclusive use of the name, so he had his lawyers send us
a nasty
oh my God letter.
Oh my God letter.
So we switched from Ventana to Fenestra, which means window in Latin.
Oh, okay.
Very clever.
Yes, yes.
And of course, that's also, Fenestra is the basis of the name for window in other languages. In German, it's Fenster.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Der Fenstermacher is a window maker.
Oh, nice.
In French, it's Fenêtre.
Didn't know that either.
And then in Italian, it's Fenestra also, except they spell it F-I-N instead of F-E-N.
Okay.
I think it's a terrific name, and I love that story too. I was thinking as you retired, and I'm going to say semi-retired, because if you're coming in 3 days a week, that's not exactly retired. But as you look back on your career in wine, what is it that you've enjoyed the most about building this, creating this brand, and this life you've enjoyed in wine? What's been best about it, and are continuing to enjoy, I should say?
Well, as you said, the creative part and making a wine and having it turn out to be a good wine, and then being able to share it with family and friends and to build a business,
Were any of the people, the early ones, when you said your first vintages, your first attempts weren't great?
Yes.
Was there ever a time when you sent some wine up to Washington or wherever you guys were making the cranberry stuff, and said, "Now look what I'm doing now"? Did you ever get to share it with the initial people who were in on the bad wine with you?
No.
Too bad. Too bad. This is proof that if at first you don't succeed, try again, because you sure did master it. I mean, goodness
Absolutely.
gracious.
Absolutely.
what we're tasting today, but also what Fenestra is known for is just some really lovely wine.
Absolutely. And it's just such a pleasure to be here and learn about Livermore Valley wine history that I certainly didn't know. I've been covering this region for more than 20 years. And so it's a delight to hear the stories. And the winemaker who told me you are the historian of the region, Dane Stark, is, again, has a connection to you.
Yes.
And through his father. So it's just like, everything comes together, full circle. It's really nice.
Absolutely. Well, Lanny, it has been our distinct pleasure to be here today, and thank you for sharing your story and your wines with us. It's been a real treat for us.
Well, thank you. And I would mention that our tasting room is open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Not during the week, because this is a working winery and we use this area.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure. But, when you come visit, there's a nice, once you get off the main road, there's a nice little drive up here. You see the vineyard, you see, depending on the time of year, but certainly right now in spring, the greenery everywhere. And you see this beautiful rustic building and you're just like in another world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you're not in the area, you can find the wines on the web, on the web page, and it's and like I said, you'll be really appreciative of the price points.
And we will list that contact information and the wines that we have been enjoying today in our show notes on our website at sipsiphoorayypodcast.com.
All right, I'm going to try one more time on the last name, Lanny Replico. Nope. Lanny.
Close. Replogal.
Replogal.
Yeah.
So the accent's in the middle. So Replogal.
Well,
right,
cheers
so
to you,
cheers,
Lanny.
Lanny.
I'm just going to stick with Lanny.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed talking about wine and the history.
Great. Well, sip, sip, hooray, and thanks again.
Sip, sip, hooray.
Well, that's going to do it for our podcast today. Thank you for listening to Sip Sip Hooray. We hope if you enjoyed the show that you'll share it with your friends, your family. Spread the word about the Sip Sip Hooray podcast.
And you can do that by, one, going to our website, sipsiphoorayypodcast.com. There you'll see all the different podcast platforms we are on. And go to your favorite one and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode when it drops. And be sure to follow us on social media. We are at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and Sip Sip Hooray, the number 1, on Twitter. Be sure to tag us with any photos if you've tried any of these wines or been to the wineries. We'd love to hear from you.
That's right. We want you in the Sip Sip Hooray family, so do stay in touch with us. And that's going to do it for us, Mary. It's time to go out and eat, drink, and be merry.
Absolutely. We're going to pop the cork and raise a glass.
Cheers to you, Mary Orland.
Cheers to you, Mary Babbitt. Sip, sip, hooray.
Sip, sip, hooray.